Amphibians. What are amphibians basically? Amphibians are basically species that are commonly found in land and in water that can actually survive in both, by the way. So, and in two primary examples of these amphibians is the frog and the toad. Now, contrary to popular belief, frog and toad are not exactly alike. I mean, they have the same characteristics, internal body segments, but they have different characteristics, such as the toad is more rough, more short-legged, and more broad-nosed than his other cousin, the frog. The frog, on the other hand, is a sleek, long-legged, and pointy-shaped frog that can actually reach far reaches of the jungle to get their own prey. Now, enough talking about the frog and the toad. Let's dive deep into the topic itself. What are the body parts of the toad? The body parts of the toad mainly consist of the differences that is basically a male or a female. Oh, I forgot to talk about the differences between the male and female. The differences between the male and the female frog is very simple. The male during mating season, the first finger of the male will be very swollen, specifically in order to hold on to the female frog for mating. The second thing is that the female is usually larger than the male during the mating season. The third is that the male actually has a black spot underneath its ventral cavity, which is can be seen through the ventral scale in, well, here. Yeah. Enough talking about the female and the male differences. Let's talk about the internal and external anatomy of the toad itself. So, in the external and internal anatomy, there's always divided into two parts, such as the axial and the appendicular. The axial composes of the head and the trunk, while the appendicular composes of the hind limbs and the forelimbs. Now let's talk about the axial region of the frog itself. The axial region composes of the head and the trunk. Under the head, there's a multiple of body parts, such as the snout, the external nares, the eyes, the tympanic membrane, and the brow spot. Now for the trunk, this is the part of the body posterior to the head, has two main parts, which is the thoracic region or the chest region and the abdominal or the lumbar region. The chest region is the anterior half in this region of the toad. This is where you can find the poison or the outer mucus covering the toad itself, while the lumbar region is where the anus and the scapal hump that is produced by the protrusion of the pelvic glide is found. Now let's move on from the axial region to the appendicular region. The appendicular region usually has two main parts, is the forelimbs and the hind limbs. The forelimbs has the upper arm, the middle forearm, the carpus or aka the wrist, the manus or hand, fingers also known as digits, and the pre-pollux, which is rudimentary first finger, and it's usually the short stump on the inside of the hand of the frog. Now, moving on, we can go to the hind limbs, which is under the appendicular version. Under the hind limbs, there are multiple parts as well, such as the thigh, the scank, the tarsus or ankle, the pes or the foot, the toes, also known as digits, web, and the pre-hallux, which is the ninth small sixth toe that everyone's been seeing in toes. That may or may not be missing, by the way, so be careful of that. Now, after talking about the external body parts of the toad, let's talk about the internal body parts of the toad, which is like the organs and the body parts. For the body parts, or the body cavities, by the way, is also known as a Pleuroperitoneal cavity, which is the cavity that occupies a greater space in the trunk, which holds most of the organs such as the stomach, the intestine, liver, pancreas, lungs. Basically, it holds the important ones. While the pericardial is a small cavity that only holds the heart, which is located at the thoracic region, where two peritoneae can be identified in this activity. Now let's go with the internal organs. As you know, the internal organs of a frog will always compose of an esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, the liver, the pancreas, the kidneys, the gonads like the ovary, oviduct, and the testes. For, ovary and oviduct is for the females, the testes is for the males. And the heart, which is basically the small piece of which pumps out blood throughout the rest of the body, and etc. etc. Most of these body parts function the same way as human does, but frog version. Now let's move on to the respiration of frogs itself. The respiration of frogs usually takes place on the frog itself. Common sense. When a frog breathes, a lot of processes go on throughout its body. Pulmonary ventilation, which is aka the breathing, and multiple respirations, because unlike humans, frogs have two types of respirations. They have two ways to breathe. One is through the skin, aka the cutaneous respiration, and one is through the lungs they have, which is also known as a pulmonary respiration, which is from our lungs. Now, let's move on to the discussion of the first stage of pulmonary respiration, which starts when the toad opens its mouth and lowers the floor of its buccal cavity, aka the oral cavity found in its mouth, which acts as a pump, by the way, as the air enters through the outer ovals of the nasal cavity, called as the external nares, towards the internal nares, which can be found in the two openings known as the glottis, which is an opening from the mouth to the lungs, which always remains closed, by the way. And during the air moves through the buccal cavity and is released through the open nares, and etc. etc. As you have known, frogs have a delicate sense of body, which has a lot of worth researching for. And yeah, sure, nowadays it's gonna become a sin to kill animals for it, but it's really an interesting discovery, and I hope that with this discovery, I hope that you can also learn something from what I have discussed today. So that's all the time I have. Thank you. My name is Carlo Candela, signing out.